we're trying something a little different. So if this is all fucked, sorry. My bad. And I'm working on fixing up some of the quality issues. So unfortunately, there's fucking construction like every goddamn fucking minute of every goddamn day. So bear with me. And hopefully, like, I'm trying to get it so that you can only hear me. But if you're hearing any of the fucking tomfoolery on the streets of Toronto, sorry. But today I really want to talk about a question that was asked to me this past week, and that was about the emotional toll that specifically selling art has. But I think like selling art kind of taps into this wider conversation about being an artist and what that means, especially when you are being an artist that sells, and that can come from the process of like creating art all the way to selling and getting rid of your art. And so a big part of this I really wanted to talk about was because it's an emotional process in a million different ways, and you experience a number of vulnerabilities as you create that are unique to the situations and the circumstances that you're in, but also just like where you are in the cycle. So a big part of it, it could be that you are feeling too anxious to start a piece, or that you are attached to a piece that you've already finished. And there's a lot of emotions. And yeah, whatever I do say in this video is really going to just be a summary. The human experience is hard, and I am aware of that. And so I'm going to do my best to kind of explain how I experience the emotional kind of side of being an artist. And like for context, just so that we're aware, like, not a full-time artist. I'm nowhere close to being a full-time artist. I do this in my free time. I have a full-time job. I love art, and it does so often feel just like a hobby because it's not always bringing me money, no matter how hard I work. And that can have its own emotional toll. And, it can be different. For example, if you're a full-time artist, you might feel more pressure because that is your sole source of income, where someone who's trying to become full-time might feel pressure because they want that to be their sole income. And so there's, varying experiences as well. But I'm kind of going to touch on what I feel and how I feel through the creating art, through the sharing of art, and through the selling of art, because I think those are distinct stages that kind of come all under this like umbrella of selling your work. So first, when you're like creating your art, there is emotion behind inspiration. To be inspired, you have to have a degree of vulnerability of the world, both, the external world and the inner world. And you have to be open to the world. And that means that you might be finding something that you don't necessarily want to. And a big part of finding inspiration or being open to inspiration is being willing to be hurt by the things that you find. And that's an answer to curiosity sometimes too. And it's not always the call that you're hoping to follow, but sometimes it is. And you have to be willing to accept that it's all a part of it. Yeah, if you want to look at the world in any type of conversation, if you view the world and your life like a relationship, you're going to have to develop a sense of intimacy, and intimacy is scary regardless of how that happens. Yeah, it might mean getting hurt. It might mean exploring difficult feelings. It might mean not necessarily like rejection, but feeling like really understanding the scope and the depth of the feeling that you're having with rejection. You're kind of going into that deeper well of feeling and how that shows up for you. One of the things I kind of want to say, like, I noticed all the time that the work I do, whether that's writing, whether that's art, or whatever the fuck I'm doing, the themes I touch on clock me. Like, every time they clock me. Like, I am brutalized by the work that I do all the time. And even if I'm hoping to say something, often I come out of it with a stance that is, going to change the way I view the world, and therefore change the way I operate and navigate. And yeah, that's kind of where it becomes this part of like your own personal progression, your own introspection and self-development, and all of that, kind of that like natural angle that just occurs either way. And if you're, hoping to say one thing, you still might learn more about who you are and how the world is, simply just because exploring anything usually results in some sort of internal and external change. On top of that, there's also going to be, feelings behind the willingness to create. You have to be vulnerable. You have to feel or be aware and ignore the chance of failure to not just want to create, but to be willing to create. You have to be okay with starting. And that means maybe not finishing. That also means you have to be okay with maybe finishing and you don't like it. Or, you're in the process and you fucking hate it. There's really a sense of bravery in doing anything, even if you've done it 100 times, because especially with the art, especially with like these more less technical things, they're going to be variant. in how they show up and how you've done them. Even if you have it down to a science, it's still going to be different because of that emotional experience and because of the changes in your life and the way you do things. There's also going to be feelings behind continuing. And this is one that I struggle with a lot in terms of I love to get started. I don't struggle too much with the fear of starting. I struggle with the perception and the experience of perceiving the middle. And being in the middle requires a lot of trust, and I am not great with that. It's a huge part of creating. Making anything, you have to, most of the thing is going to be in the active stage of the incomplete, and often you'll fucking hate your work. The countless times I hate my work, like, it's not, I've learned to get over that a little bit. So it still gets to you, of course, but you can contextualize it. And one of the things that has helped me is, like, if I still hate it, it's not done. That's what I tell myself. Like, if I hate it right now, I can put it away and then I can try again later. And often you're cool with it. Often it's totally fine. You just needed to step away. Now we're still kind of in the creating thing. You're working on your piece. You're done, or you think you're done. And there's, a lot of feelings that come behind finishing. And there's vulnerability in saying something is done. You have not only this, like, kind of knowing and this experience of knowing that has to do with catharsis, and you feel the kind of relief of, like, oh, the message has been relayed, the process is no longer needing to be held on to. And we know that when we've exhausted these themes and when the work has told us what we need to know, but you have to be okay with saying, this is it, this is how it goes. And that kind of brings us into, like, the sharing art. So you finished your art, you've decided and you feel it, and you feel it, that the work is complete. Now you got to share. And if you're like me, like, we can kind of rewind a little bit, and I share art throughout the process. You kind of have to be okay with people not seeing the vision, and when you post half finished things, you can kind of expect to be a little uncomfortable because some people won't see the vision because it's not for them to see. There's a lot of mystery, and you have to be kind of, I don't know, it can be a little uncomfortable leaving the rest of a piece to another's imagination. And there's a little bit of letting go of control there that needs to happen. So when I first started, I remember I would only share finished pieces. I think a part of that is the control over the perception of your work. And I was worried that, like, what if I share this piece and it turns out bad and then I can't share the finished project? Well, I mean, can't isn't interesting, anyways. I don't want to share the final product. And you kind of have to, like, get over the fact that you can't vouch for all of your work in the end. You can show snippets, you can share where you're at, and maybe you don't want to share the finished piece, but it doesn't matter. Like, also, no one's keeping track. They're not going to be like, hey, what happened to that piece you started then? And, like, maybe they will, but, like, at the end of the day, it's like, I'm not happy with it, I'm leaving it. It's totally up to you. You have that control over your work, even if you don't feel that you have the control over, people's perception of the work. Now, another part of sharing your work that can be incredibly vulnerable and incredibly emotional is kind of opening yourself up to rejection. I've talked about rejection a lot on this channel just because there's a lot of vulnerability needed, and I hated feedback. I would lose my mind when people gave me feedback, and I struggled a lot with hearing people's differing opinions on my work, especially, like, I don't do amazing with authority. I never have. I don't love the sense of someone feeling like they have power over you. And, that changes in relationships where there's a mentorship, of course. And I think it was just, I didn't like teachers. I don't like, people that are often, like, carrying these kind of power trips. Not my vibe. I don't fuck with those people. So I started to associate, like, people kind of having their say as people who felt that they should and could. But yeah, I had a big issue with authority. I believed that those who were expressing their feelings about my work were feeling like they were entitled to, and that I was less than. And of course that comes from a place of insecurity and also personal experience, and et cetera, et cetera. But you kind of have to get used to it. I think with age you get used to it. I think it becomes less personal. One of the 4 agreements: don't take things personally, because they're not personal, and often they aren't. Often people do want to better your skill, and often people just want to see you succeed. And I prefer to operate in a world where I believe that is the primary goal of other people. Yeah, for a really, really long time it was quite difficult for me, and took a lot of vulnerability and opening up to build that trust with strangers, because a lot of people, like, especially when you develop, like, a bit of a following, people love to give their 2 cents, even if I don't want to hear it. And oftentimes I don't. Like, it's still kind of like something that I don't love. But the last thing that I'm going to do is keep my skill or my art in a box because of pride or because of shame. And so, I try to do my best to consider, but everything, it's hard because, you especially when it's something so personal and emotional, and if you're like me and a lot of your works really reflect like your life and the things you're going through and things that are deep and personal to you, it can be hard to have someone kind of comment when they don't know the ins and outs of why you did what you did. But you have to kind of have strength and feel that validation on your own and, still consider other people. But yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying that like there's a lot of feelings that come behind the possibility for being rejected and or feeling like things aren't perceived the way that you want them to be or understood, and you have to be okay with not being understood, especially when you're dealing with metaphorical things or presenting things in a way that leaves room for interpretation, which is all art. And the best part about it is that people feel that and they see their own lives in it and they feel their own lives in it and they can put themselves in the like your shoes without being so connected to someone else's experience. They can still tie to that universal side of things, and it's great. But yeah, it's all that climbing cringe mountain. It's the being okay with being embarrassed or feeling embarrassed and knowing that embarrassment is kind of like a wasted feeling. That's that. And of course it feels dangerous in some ways, like, and your body doesn't know the difference between like being haunted by a cougar and someone telling you that they don't like what you do. And it's hard to pave the way for people to solidify the voice in your head that you have been trying to not have and try not to listen to. And yeah, but then when you shut away those opportunities, you're also giving people, or you're taking away the chance for people to help you with a new voice and give you opportunity to strengthen your voice and know where you stand. A big part of where I develop my confidence is from listening to other people, even though like you don't base your confidence on external validation. You allow other people's feedback to contribute to your self-image and your skill and all, et cetera, and you listen. And so yeah, there's a lot of feeling behind receiving feedback. There's vulnerability in hearing what you probably don't want to hear. Often people, like I said, just like to hear themselves speak. Their comments are usually not welcome. I had a guy once say that I posted a short clip in the middle of my piece where I fucked it up and it was right on the base layer. And of course, like if you know my work, the base layer is the least interesting part about it. And I was like, oh no, I like fucked up this little like base layer. And the guy comments, oh no, you fucked up your third grade painting? Which honestly, like, bruh, like get a hobby. There's other things to say. And people will call your work trash and they'll do these things. And it's like, at the end of the day, you kind of win because, bruh, jobless behavior, loser behavior. Like, come on, get like literally have bigger problems. I don't have time to comment on people's TikToks. But yeah, over time you get used to it. Like I've received countless things that I'm just like, they're not helpful feedback. It's just insulting, and they're just there to bring you down. And often it's just people who just like feel like shit about themselves. And they can have that for themselves. I'm not interested in taking on their weight. So yeah, there's that kind of emotional side, which is really that like intimacy, that worry of rejection, that feeling of like keeping closeness with your work without losing yourself or losing your sense of self in the process. And then selling art is the part that makes it real complicated because now money is involved and now maybe your livelihood is involved. And if you're full-time, maybe your ability to like feed yourself is involved. Or if you're like me and use art to supplement your income, maybe your ability to continue to create is not there. So I'll go kind of a little bit more into each of those. But yeah, there's like your heart, like you have your heart kind of on the line for a lot of different ways of selling. And the first that I think of is like often like a lot of questions I get in terms of like, how do I feel creating is when it comes to commissions. How do I feel when I'm making work for others, when someone's telling me what to create? And I think it's important to note that like if you can try to only choose work that feels right and that gives you creative freedom. I love doing commissions that give me creative freedom. They're often the best because they have a bit of detachment from kind of the heaviness of your personal life, and it becomes more of like this kind of opportunity for play. It doesn't need to be deep or coming from the emotional wall that we talked about. It can just be fun. And that experience of joy is also something universal that people can tap into and the experience that they understand in their own unique way. And yeah, there isn't like the same organic inspiration process, but oftentimes it's a co-creation, and that could be interesting in its own way. But yeah, there is like a little bit of emotional complexity in commissioned work and doing things like that aren't entirely you and not entirely your voice. But yeah, if you're like me and you create to supplement your income, so you're not creating because you have to so much as that you want to, but you can't necessarily afford to make all the time. So there's this kind of pressure to create so that you can create more because you have this natural inclination to create. You want to create. It feels good. It feels right. But you maybe need that like supplementary income to help fund it. And that's kind of where I am. It's more of a self-sustaining thing. Like I don't really make any money, but I make enough to continue what I do. Yeah, there's a bit of pressure on that because, want to make something that gives you just enough money that you can keep going. You don't need a lot because you have other work. When we make work, regardless of if it's for us or another person, the goal is always to keep going. Like in some degree, we want to be able to create for as long as we can, however we can. Yeah, sometimes selling work is the only way to afford it. Even space wise, like fuck, I actually cannot afford space wise to continue to create without selling some of my work. But it's tough. I can't make people buy it. And yeah, there's a sense of like, you feel the emotional weight of like, why don't people buy it? Why won't it sell? And it's hard. You deal with self-doubt and anxiety and this thing like, can I really do this? Is this something that I'm actually good at? Is this something that I really enjoy? Do I enjoy feeling this doubt? Do I enjoy feeling this anxiety? Is it better for me just to step back and avoid it altogether? And of course, like the answer is always create, regardless of your fears and your anxieties and your doubts, because creation will always feel better, and more freeing and more fluid than the constrictions of not allowing yourself and the rigidity of not allowing yourself to create. But yeah, I know it's tough. As someone who kind of relies on supplementary income to continue to create, like I can't afford to like buy shit like this microphone. I can't, that comes out of something else. Like, if I didn't have art, I wouldn't be able to do that. And sometimes I don't have art to be able to do that, and then it keeps your projects where they are. You deal with it. But yeah, it can complicate and pressure your work. It can make it feel impersonal and like it's becoming this monetized thing or standardized process, and it becomes just like it can feel shallow or like artificial. But yeah, it's just like best to sit as closely to your work as you can and just like continue that bond regardless. Like I kind of always say, like, life is a relationship. You are a person operating in the world, and you engage with the things that you do, the people that you see, the lives that you encounter, the earth, the environment, your environment, wherever that is, and your behaviors, your life experience, your beliefs, your attitudes. These are all things that you relate to and from. And if you view everything like a relationship, it becomes a little bit easier to kind of like develop that intimacy, truly develop that intimacy. And you can kind of back away from that pressure a little bit, because it's more about the process and the learning and the conversation than it becomes anything else. But then it gets sentimental, and then you're like, oh fuck, now it's time to push my work, and now this thing matters to you. And you have to experience this new kind of vulnerability behind standing behind what you do. And not only have you done it, okay, you've done this thing, you feel good about it, you like it, now you gotta tell people you like it in some way or another. You're not saying, hey, I love this thing I did, look at what I do, but you're telling people, look at what I do. And you put your name and your face and you kind of vouch for the work that you've done. And that can be embarrassing. Regardless of how amazing your work is, it's embarrassing. I find it embarrassing. I don't tend to give people my Instagram because it's my art account. It's everything. Like, if you follow me, you follow me. That's my personal, that is my art, that is my writing, that is everything. I am me. That's it. That's all you get. And it's all in one kind of platform, and it's scary to be like, this is me, this is what I vouch for, this is who I am, and this is what I stand for. And yeah, like, what if someone sees that you're proud of this thing that you do and they think it's dumb, and then you're like, oh perfect, now it's double dumb because I thought it was cool and I said that it was cool. Not only is it dumb, but I said it's cool, and now I'm dumb for thinking it's not dumb. I think it's important to also remember that when people think things are dumb or stupid or ugly or embarrassing or whatever, oftentimes someone thinks it's so briefly in their head that it's like not even worth like sitting in your mind for any longer than it would for them. If you have that fear, allow it to be as short as theirs. Allow it to be as short as their judgment, because it does not last. And we hold onto judgment of ourselves far more than we hold onto the judgment of others, because it's so passing for them. It's so passing for them. And why does it sit with us for so long if that's how it is for them, if that's how they experience it? It's funny. Like, your excitement for your work and your passion is so much more rich, has more potential for artistic growth and expression than judgment does. And it's just interesting, like, the way we hold these things differently, and for the length of time and the depth that we do. So yeah, this is like kind of like the cringe mountain final boss. You not only are you sharing your work, you're pushing your work. You're saying like, hey, not only do I do this thing, take a look. You're not existing passively. You're shoving it in people's faces, and that's a good thing. It's the only way it works. Unfortunately, it's the only way it works. The most growth I've ever had in terms of building any form of like attention around my work has been like fully vouching and standing behind it. It's awful. What can you do? But yeah, it's taxing to push your work, to show people what you think of what you do. Um, it can be hard to navigate the self-doubt loop. It fucking sucks. When it comes time to promote, you sort of have to like believe that you're good enough, even if you don't think you are. And what I do personally is I ride on the high of one good thing I've done. If I've done one good art piece and I know it's good, I know it's good, and I know that I'm a good writer because I've done one good written piece and people like that piece and I like that piece. And maybe this new piece no one's laid eyes on but me, and I think it's quite all right, but maybe someone thinks it's stupid and bad and I'm stupid and bad. But I have to lean on what I know, which is that, I have the capacity for it to be good. And you can't be so hard on the work, on everything you do, because not everything's going to be a fucking winner, first of all. And second of all, because you learn about yourself and about who you are and about the things that you're creating. Lean on the moments that feel good and allow that to get you through the doubt. Let that belief kind of trickle into everything that you do. If one thing is good enough, odds are it ain't half bad, whatever it is that you're doing. And now, finally, I'm getting to answer the question that someone asked me this week, which is still about the emotional part of selling art, but specifically about how do you know like when it's time to sell, about that emotional side. And it came because I put up a piece that is really important to me. It's called Allegory of a Life Well Lived. It came when I had a parent that was going through the final stages of cancer. It was a time when, they were quite young, and I was asking myself about life, and I was asking myself about what a good life meant, especially if it's cut short. And I've lost a lot of people in my life, and it's very obvious to me that life is not about the length at all. And so I was asking myself, like, what does it mean to live a good life? What does it look like to live a good life? And my answer was play, and my answer was this painting. And so it developed this really big sentiment to me, very, very important to me. And it dawned on me, this happened. I created this piece. It took 4 months during 2024, the first 4 months of 2024. I finished it shortly after that parent had passed. It is now August of 2025, and I decided it's time to let it go. And the reason I decided it's time to let it go is just because it feels right to let it go. We love what we do. It means something to us. This piece meant something to me. It means something to me, but I can't hang on to that feeling forever. I can't be tied to that experience forever. And the experience of creating that work, and that work is beautiful. And other people it's their turn to feel what they need to feel from it. It hasn't sold yet either. But it's like a child, like in many ways you allow that work to grow and grow with you, and you learn from it, and you teach the world something through it. And yeah, you build something to be a part of the world in its own right, and you weren't working on it anymore, and it's not working on you anymore. The relationship has run its course. I know sometimes things take months. Like I said, that one took me 4 months. It took me a very, very long time. It means a lot to me. It's also the first piece that I ever displayed in a gallery. It's the only piece I've ever displayed in a gallery. Yeah, I don't know. It took me where I needed it to go, and it just became, abundantly clear to me that like that stage of my life, I've learned so much from that experience, and so much from the experiences that led up to that, and the experiences that came out of that. And it's time. I don't know. It just felt right. And again, it's more intuitive than I think you'd like to hear. I think you would love to hear that it's some definitive thing, that there's something I can say, like, this is the moment, you'll know, but you'll feel it, you'll know. And because it's so intuitive, it gives you a lot of opportunities to ignore it. I probably hang on to work for a lot longer than I should. I wasn't even sure that I would ever sell that painting, and I decided to put it up. And I mean, I still haven't sold it, but yet. But for now, it's the possibilities there, and I'm opening the world up to that possibility. And a big part of that is reminding yourself, why do you do what you do? Do you create? Like, if I'm making something cool or beautiful or meaningful, at the end of the day, it's because I want more of that in the world, and not in piles in my art room. And so it was very obvious, suddenly, like, it's losing its purpose. I made this to do this one specific thing, to make this world more beautiful, so I can learn from it, so I can have this experience, can I teach through my experiences to others, that either they're not alone, or that this is something that I learned, this is something that I felt. Can I do that if it's sitting on my floor stacked in a pile of other paintings that mean just as much to me? No. And that's when it becomes obvious, is it serving the purpose that you intended? Because you can, there's written pieces I have that are entirely private, and I'll take to my grave, and I don't intend to sell those things or share them or whatever. There are things I do just for me, and that wasn't one of them. And that's how I know that it's time. And you have to be very vulnerable with yourself, because allowing yourself to cycle through grief is a very, very hard thing to do. And you have to be incredibly brave to do it. And I can't even speak to that fully because I haven't sold the piece yet. I only started the first step by putting it on my website. But yeah, there's so many different things that happen in your experience of selling art. From the beginning to the end, you're going to be experiencing that deeper well of emotions. You're coming from the depths of your imagination. You're coming into sharing that with the world. You're sharing the ins and outs of your mind, your inner wisdom, your experiences, your soul, however you view it, you're sharing that. Not only are you sharing that, you're asking people for money for it. And then you're asking the world to take it from you, and not in like a, like, like obviously willingly, but it's hard. It's hard. And there's so many feelings that go into it. And because it's such an emotional experience, it can be really difficult. And it is really difficult. And I struggle with it, as many artists do. And I hope this just like in some way kind of provides some perspective of like where myself as an artist comes from, and maybe there's some relatability there. But yeah, it's hard. It takes a lot of heart. And one of my pieces actually is called Faint of Heart. And it's because I was learning that. I was learning this is not for the faint of heart. Vulnerability is not for the faint of heart. Sharing and being disappointed is not for the faint of heart. There's many paintings that I thought I would do that would change my life. I thought this would be it. And there's many that they have changed my life, first of all, but I think I meant more in like a career sense. And it hasn't. It hasn't. It's changed my life in these gradual ways, but you're always waiting for something to like change your life, and it doesn't always happen. But yeah, Faint of Heart came from that. It really did. It came from that recognition that the entire process of selling art, the entire process of showing up in the world requires extreme vulnerability that I don't always have, nor do I always want to have it. And yeah, there's a lot of courage that it takes, and I'm proud of every single person that shows up every day and shows up to the world in a way that makes sense for them and that honors who they are and what they want to do, and also honors the fact that this is a tricky experience. It's not cut and dry. It's not definitive. It's not step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a cycle, and it's a vicious, shitty cycle that I don't always love. That's all part of it, baby. That's all a part of it, and you'll get through it. And yeah, you'll know when it's time to do what you need to do, because you'll answer that call. Always answer the call. Always answer the call. I don't believe there's a person on this earth that doesn't have a strong intuition. All you have to do is listen to it, and it'll get stronger and stronger and stronger. It's already there. You have to listen to it. You gotta listen to it. It's there. I promise you. I used to not believe in intuition because I had extreme anxiety, and I would think, oh my God, my intuition is real, then my anxiety is real. They're different though. Intuition isn't fear. It's an inner knowing, because when you think of it, it doesn't strike an emotional chord, you know? And so, you have these emotional experiences that are tied to this intuitive process, but they're not the same thing. And yeah, this intuitive process will link with feelings of grief and embarrassment and shame and joy and excitement and fucking everything. It'll connect with everything, because the creative life is the life that we live, and that is just the full range of the human experience and the human emotions, and life is fucking hard. I hope that answered this person's question. I'm sorry you waited to the very, very end to get the answer. And don't worry, guys, I did answer them over DM. So you don't have to watch this if they don't want to. But also, shout out to them for inspiring this video and having me reflect on that, and recognizing like kind of where that plays a part in my life. Because yeah, always listen to the people in your D. It's not good advice. It's not good advice. Always be open to your DMs.